Good evening and welcome to Take Two. Thank you guys for joining us here live, as well as those joining us live online. As you can see, I got Brian.
The audience is crazy today, you should see.
We have a little different scenery here. If you guys were here Sunday, you saw that we've painted the place. We're doing some new things. Had a facelift. Felt it was important if we're going to start off. Let's start off fresh, and it sure felt that way. It really did.
Oh, nice.
You know, I think painting is a great way to kind of set things off, and there's definitely a little bit more taking place when the place feels good. It's more than just an aesthetic look. It's kind of something that affects you.
Yeah.
So it was great having people here Sunday. It made me, gosh, feel more alive, just being able to communicate. And so we are continuing that. Remind you that we are here Sunday inside. Masks are optional. They recommend if you're not vaccinated that you still are safe and wear a mask, but we're not going to card you. So you're welcome to come and join us, and just bear in mind your own safety. We do have outside still available if you don't feel comfortable inside, where you can meet outside. It's getting pretty hot, so most people were inside Sunday because of the air conditioning, but we had a few people outside. And so those are options, and hope you guys will join us because it's so important to connect. Also, another thing that we have been trying to do is develop some workshops. You want to share a little bit about the workshops and what we're trying to do?
Yeah, so me and Sam and Jordan and Randy met a week ago, and we had this idea of basically trying to reimagine how gathering could look like. Sam had this thing where he was saying that we don't want to come back the same, we want to come back better. Or maybe that was Randy. Either way, I think it's a great way to see it. And all of us have passions. All of us have a circle outside of Genesis. And what a beautiful way to be able to bring people here that and connect people to other people, and connect people to God, connect people to Jesus, connect people to other people's passion. Then inviting them to an event. And I think if you have a passion for anything, a lot of you remember when we were doing the different classes here in the space. We're trying to get it as creative as possible. I mean, those Pilates, DJ, painting, philosophy, things you probably would never imagine should be at a church, but we were opening the room up to ideas, and I think that's what makes Genesis great. So if you have a passion or an idea, come and share that with us.
Church is people.
Church is
Right?
people. Yeah.
Church is people, and so we have to keep that in mind. So whatever people are into, that's where God is going to be and show up, and we want to meet Him there.
Absolutely.
So last Sunday, I kind of broke from the transformation wheel, and I talked about God meeting us where we're at, and I used the story of Moses to try and give an example. Or actually, Stephen in Acts 7 uses Moses as an example of leading to Christ. And we look at Moses, and he started off in a real deficit,
Yeah.
right? At that time, Stephen says, and at that time was the time when the Israelites were enslaved. At that time was when Pharaoh took the firstborn male of the children and had them killed. At that time is when Moses' mother had to put him in a basket and send him off into a river, susceptible to, again,
Anything.
I don't know if there's alligators or crocodiles in the Nile, but one of those things are out there, the predators, and just drowning, because that was a better option than keeping him, right? So at that time was a time of extreme deficit, and yet we know the story of Moses, how his life ended up being used in a powerful way. And I thought that would be fitting after a year plus of pandemic to be able to say, at that time, there's not a period, there is a comma, and life is going to continue. And what God did through Moses, we want God to do through us. That was kind of the starting point and the gist of it.
Yeah.
So,
That was great. I think you did a really good job too.
thank you.
Yeah.
And that's it, everyone.
Yeah, thank
We'll see
you.
later. I was wanting it to connect with people and maybe some of the things that they have gone through in this past year, or maybe prior to that even. Anything strike you about, what's happened? I know Kirk shared a little bit with me that there were some things meaningful to him.
I think off the bat when I was listening to it, I thought of, when you hear somebody's story that was kind of like how you're describing Moses' story as being starting off rough, and sometimes maybe you might hear somebody's, like imprisonment story, and they got out and they started a business, and or
Yeah.
like almost like the pain jump started the triumph. And sometimes you hear a story like that, and you're like, do I need something like that to happen to me before I'm able um, to accomplish something great, or like I, and that may be a weird example, but I guess what I was leading to was that rarely do we like see ourselves and look into our own lives and the things that we may have gone through and overcame as ways that God is using and orchestrating towards the triumphant moment, or that future to use by him. So I think, like, I don't know, when you're saying stuff like he started off rough for Moses, or like even it started off like a unlucky or whatever, like it was a tough beginning, and you're like, almost did it have to happen for him to be able to have that kind of foresight to be able to move forward? And I think we all have those in a sense. I mean, we didn't get put on the river. A lot of us didn't kill anybody. And just, but I'm saying, like, we all have a story that leads to something. You made a really good point later about how you had all these gigs and how all of them are a piece of you, and a piece of that is leading you towards who you are now. And I think that's it's beneficial to do that inventory of like where God has taken you already.
Yeah, and I hear my wife's voice in my ear, because she always is an includer, right? And you don't have to be thrown into river with crocodiles. You don't have to have major, pitfalls, and you don't have to do grand, extravagant, delivering a whole nation from deliverance
slavery,
to be used by God. Even small things can be powerful things in the life of some people. And so I think this story is encompassing of a lot, right? It's not just the big people doing the big things or having the big problems happening. It could happen in small ways too. But there is an understanding that God doesn't waste anything. He's very good at making every circumstance, every issue that you've gone through or even have, work out to something that's beneficial. The whole point of Romans 8:28, God works all things out for the good, is encompassed in a chapter that is filled with terrible things happening.
Yeah.
Right? And it's there that God shows up and does the good.
Right.
And so I think it is important to realize that. But then when we do feel like we are, alone, we do feel like the odds are against us. We feel like an outsider. I think I said he was outside, and I used just the illustration that Moses really wasn't accepted by the Jewish people at first because he was raised in the house of Pharaoh.
Right.
And he's not really an Egyptian because they knew he was a Hebrew child, right? So he kind of had this no man's land.
Yeah.
And I shared the story about the person whose dog I trained in Reno. That's the one I remember I asked you to give me that poem that you did.
Yeah.
About when you
Filipino.
were. Yeah, Filipino. I shared that with her.
Cool.
And so just because I thought, oh man, I know someone who's so I shared it with her, and I think she really enjoyed it. So, but that feeling outside, feeling like you don't belong, I don't know, I think we all feel that to some degree.
Yeah, and I think it's strange because, like, you think that Moses, like, when you think of Moses, I think you touched on this a little bit too, like, you think of Moses, like it's like, and then you forget, like, there's like, he has a backstory, he has like a past, he was isolated, he was different, and it's cool, like, what the Bible does really good is, like, it gives us insight to relationship with the person, like, it almost gives us like a snapshot of like their life and how, and their legacy, and what brought them up to the spot. And it's almost like I wish that um, we could like do that for ourselves,
Mm.
like Kurt was saying, he makes poem, like writes poems recently, and I do. When I look back at poems, like the poem that I read on Art for Artists,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't remember really writing that. I was sharing
Yeah.
that, and I think that's what kind of documenting does. You can somebody documented the life of Moses, and you're able to see that struggles, that he was isolated, that it wasn't good, that he did things that were ungodly, that he was still being used by God, and not only that, but he was a gifted, a prophet. He was
Yeah.
like a deliverer. He was, only person that saw God or whatever. Like it was like he was used at the highest level, and this is the person that maybe should not have been used by
Yeah, I mean, the
earthly
guy
standards.
murdered
Yeah.
somebody,
Right. Yeah.
crying out loud. And again, we tend to read over those things as, oh
Yeah.
yeah, by the way, he killed somebody, right? Or
Yeah.
David, yeah, he killed this person.
Right.
It's like, oh, that's a bad thing to do. That's a real bad thing to do,
Yeah.
right? I mean, that's just not a little thing. That's
Yeah. It's not kind of
pretty,
bad.
yeah, that's kind of go to jail for those things, right? I mean, those are things that it's funny how we can give a pass to our Bible heroes, but we have a different, category for the people around us.
Yeah.
Just interesting how that takes place. Your poem that you shared at the AFA, the Art for Artists, I was thinking about that when I was putting this together, just when you were talking about your aunt who has Alzheimer's and can't remember, right? And then talking about, well, what memories would you delete? And then it's like, no, I need those memories, right?
Yeah.
Those memories are part of who I am. And so even those things that, seem just trivial, or like in there, you talk about some of the awkward moments of your life and how I'd like to just forget those things. But then at the end, you were just like, no, those are important, right?
Yeah.
And you said something in there, gosh, what was it? You had a line, something, it's memories are more important.
Then feelings.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. I think. Well, gosh, there's so much. So, no, I wanted to ask real quick, and we'll come back to that
Okay.
about who you wrote who you wrote the sermon for, and who you're thinking about when you were saying that, like everybody, what prompted you to write about using Moses as a story to talk about significance, or that you matter, and thanks for the shout out for that used car salesman had a year, that part matters too. Thank you.
I mean, it definitely was for, I think, coming out of the pandemic. I thought of a plague. I thought of how it seems like our whole planet's been plagued this past year. We've gone through things that I've never gone through before. And I think about the kids growing up having to, face a world that they don't understand and that seems very dangerous all of
Yeah.
a sudden. When you're having to wear masks and you can't go to school, and how do you recover from something like that? You can't just pretend it didn't happen.
Right.
You can't just say, okay, we're going back to school now, everything's good. It's like, excuse me, my mom lost her job. I didn't get to see my grandma who died. There are thousands of stories more like that where it's something that is going to have tremendous impact for decades if we do not give that a voice and acknowledge what happened there. Just like we had to acknowledge where Moses is, where we are, where our society has been. To allow it to have value, we have to allow the weight of what has happened we have to feel it. If we don't feel the weight of what's happened in our society, we will ignore it, and we will still walk with a limp because of it.
Yeah.
Especially in our children, I think. And so I just wanted to kind of put something to say that where you are, God is not going to allow it to be waste. And to those children who went through horrific things and are frightened, it's not going to be a waste. It can build a better future if we can learn from it. And that's what I hope we can do. And so that's kind of some of the thoughts I had,
Yeah.
just dealing with it.
I was just curious because I was like thinking about like how you picked Moses for for that. You'd think you would pick like a Ruth or like a Job or somebody that was like,
Yeah. No, I actually thought of plagues, thought of Moses, and then I went and listened to a bunch of talks on Moses, and put
and
it
it did it
together.
for you.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I liked a little bit on the holy ground too. I like the your take on taking your shoes off because you want to be
it's close to.
close to God. You know, that was pretty
Yeah.
cool. Yeah,
Yeah. I think we tend to look at things like, oh, take your shoes off. It's like, oh, God wants us to be distant. And I feel like God is always wanting us to be close.
I think of it like God. That people read that and they want us to be religious, like take your shoes off, take your cover your face,
Yeah.
like a religious thing. But when you said that, it kind of it brings that whole like interpretation of who God is in relation to
Mm.
us. I also thought of it like, what do shoes do? Like protect us, and God doesn't want us to be protected.
Hmm.
Like He is our protection, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like He's our shoes or something.
Yeah.
Like
Almost a vulnerability by getting there. So,
yeah, yeah. Like would be directly touching,
Yeah.
holiness. Or
Yeah.
but we think of it like be sacred or be,
Yeah.
like
This is special.
like yeah. This is, but God's like,
Gotta
no,
do the right things.
I want you to touch as close to me as possible. It's just beautiful.
Yeah. No. Yeah. It's, I think, a powerful picture
Hmm.
of just, what God is trying to do with us and drawing us near.
Yeah.
It's, one of those things where it's God, because we are so diverse and we have so many, you know, backgrounds represented in just even like a small community like ours, that diversity is possibility, right? That diversity is the ability to communicate in a much broader sense. I think it was when I was talking with your wife Alex one time. She was remembering when she went on a mission trip, and she could speak the language, and she was so thankful because she was able to communicate. Right, that whole other language gave her the ability to see the world in a much bigger way. And if we are together a community, then all these members allow us to have much more influence and effect on the world.
Yeah.
And I think all those things, Moses was educated in Egypt, and I said, what a waste, right? I mean, what good is an education in Egypt when you're in a wilderness with the Hebrews?
Right.
Right? It's like you're not going to talk about their gods, right? You're not going to talk about the Nile. All these things are back where you are. I mean, we don't know exactly what he learned, but it wasn't wasted.
Right.
God had all those things be a part of his life, even though he was in a totally different place.
Yeah.
And I think that's an amazing thing when you hear people, well, even just like the class that we had, the AFA class, where we had the two poets, the musician, and myself. I'm here, I'm a dog trainer. But we all had different places to come from.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting, even I shared how it all ended up kind of around Christ. That was just a wild thing.
Yeah, and even to connect to that, there was like the thing that Lydia shared about like being able to learn two steps up,
Yeah.
and I know none of you guys were there, but I was talking about kids learning and how if a kid is learning, typically they won't learn from me. They're going to learn from another kid that's a little bit higher than them, and then maybe when they get to their level, they might go a little higher than them. And I think as adults, if we could get that concept back, like maybe through the pandemic, maybe through what we've been through, maybe through our talking about our stories and healing, we might be able to realize that there are still some people who are trying to heal, and you might be on the healed side, and knowing that they're looking at you as two steps up, knowing that you are in a teaching position. And I think that's where the call to leading workshops and such, like the participation, like the call to participation is like a pretty cool thing, because you're now self-aware that you have taken what you have learned from church, from your circle. Now you can share that with somebody else and empower them. Like that's that is church. That's the
Yeah.
beautiful thing. Yeah, that's
And that's the whole point of like the
yeah.
workshops and what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to help everyone participate in the work. It's not
Right.
just, a few people are going to do the work. We need everyone involved with it. And so many of you are involved. I mean, so many people are reaching out to their friends, the people who are, shut in, making those phone calls, extending help by sending meals and things like that. I mean, that's been going on. I couldn't even list all the things that have been happening. So it's amazing and it's wonderful, and we want to see it continue just in so many more ways.
Right.
Right. But yeah, it's important to see that God meets us where we're at, takes whatever influence we have, and can mentor somebody.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if it's just a step behind us, someone just needing a little help to get through, doing something. I know Corrine has this ability when people are looking to, get a driver's license or to get something done, with a passport. She's like on it. She's like, let me make some phone calls. Let me get this. And she like drive them down to, LA to get their passport expedited or something like that. Those kinds of things where if you just need a little help, there's someone there who can probably do that,
Yeah.
for you. And it's not like she's an expert on, documentation. She
has a servant's heart too.
yeah, she just,
That's what I'm saying too. Is like a lot of us are in this like, I can't do it stage, and like God's like, no, you have everything inside of you that can allow you to accomplish the thing that I already put on your heart.
Yeah.
I didn't put on your heart if I didn't think you couldn't do it, or and finding the way. I think we make so many excuses, and part of that Moses story is like he had every excuse to not, or
yeah,
and he shouldn't have, but it's like God's like calling you. There's no reason you're equipped,
Yeah.
like you have it in you already. So
I think it's funny. There is, in high school, my geometry class, I just like could care less about geometry because I thought to myself, I'm never going to need geometry,
Yeah.
right? Because I was going to be a rock star, and rock
course.
stars don't need geometry.
Absolutely.
So
What'd you
I made it through geometry. I had a C, and one of the teachers, there's two teachers that shared the class, and one of the teachers said to me at the end of the class, she said, you had the most double zeros, which means I didn't turn in the work, anyone ever in my class, and you still passed. And I took it as a compliment, right? Like, yeah. That's right. I could do nothing and still pass. And it's only because I cheated. But I thought, I'll never need this. I ended up in a profession when I was engineering fire sprinklers where I needed to relearn geometry. And I just thought I'd never need it, and here I am later needing it, right? And all these things that happen in our lives, and you think, that's useless, that's useless. And then you never know, down the line, it could be like vital.
Yeah.
And so something that you thought, that's trivial, that's not a big deal, that's a memory I just want to forget, or that's something I've gone through a job experience, whatever, and down the line, it could be something that's really important. You'll encounter someone, a circumstance, a job, and boom, there it is. It shows up in a powerful way.
And side note nugget, I don't know if you heard this, Fundamentalist, but Sam and I listened to this podcast called The Fundamentalist, and one of the guys on there, Peter Rollins, he had said, he was talking about math. Did I tell you that? Did you listen to it? What he was like basically saying that like how we see God is a lot how people see math when they're learning math in elementary and growing up in high school. They're like math is over there and you're like learning the thing, and then you come to a point, you might come and you may never come to the point where like you start looking around and like literally God, math is everywhere, like math is in the glasses you wear, and like this table and it was just engineered, the TV, and you're like, no, math is like not the thing, it's math is everything.
Yeah.
Like there's like a moment like you're like God is in everything, like if you could get there. And I think that's like a powerful place too, because it takes God away from being the thing, like the white beard, lightning bolt God, to like, God's like here now,
Yeah.
like when two or more gather, he's here, and the Holy Spirit's here, and Jesus came, and and now the Holy Spirit lives in us, like it's like it's just a crazy realization when you get there,
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
but empowers you
so,
to move to a place where we're trying to get to. I think
yeah,
Yeah.
to at least see it and see the
Yeah.
potential that's there. No, that's really cool. Hi, Connie.
Hi, Connie.
And anyone else who's online, if you want to have any questions, jump in and
Huh?
uh,
Oh, Kirk says hi, Connie.
Kirk says hi. And then if you guys have any questions, if you want to speak up, you feel free to. Yeah.
Anyone?
I wanted to hear more about what you were talking about, how everything's like fertilizer.
How everything's fertilizer.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, what we think is waste is actually fertilizer. Um, that God uses the waste of our lives to be fuel for our future. He takes the mistakes and brings meaning. I think that's important to keep in mind so we don't get lost in the, you know, depression of what's happening, because it's easy to do, especially through a year like what we've had, to just like, man, this year was a waste. It doesn't have to be, right? It could actually be fertilizer for the future if we want to learn from it. And I think we should. I mean, that's kind of what we're trying to do with the workshops and things, is really let's make the most out of what's happened, and let's try and connect like we've never connected before in better ways.
God up cycles.
God up cycles?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Repurposes.
Upcycles.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Very good. The alternative, and I talked about this, is Moses fled because he was in fear for his life because he just killed somebody, and then he settled in the wilderness for 40 years. And I don't know, that's a fear I have of settling, because I think when you settle, usually you're not aware that you're settling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just kind of like you get tired, you stop trying. I mean, it happens in relationships, it happens in jobs, and it can happen in life where you just settle. And that scares me. I don't know. What are your thoughts on just that idea of settling?
Another shout out to Lydia, because she shared this song about, it was like a lullaby type song, and it was about a bear. And then later we asked her what the bear was or who the bear was. And I thought it was a person maybe named Bear or an actual bear. But she said the bear represents like content, being content. And her description of being content was either settling or not moving forward. And the bear in the lullaby was, she said, should I be scared of you? Should I be safe with you?
Yeah.
Like, it was like, you don't know when you're, and I think everybody, this is like a human condition thing, like everybody knows that feeling, like, do I be safe and build my white picket fence? And do I like try to like get to a place where everything's perfect? Or do I realize that that's not a real place? And do I move into a constant like learning of like my spouse, into a new space that we can build for other people? Do we constantly be uncomfortable so other people could be comfortable? Like, it's like, I think that's like settling. It is dangerous. I mean, like how you see it. I think being content and settling are different.
Yeah.
But settling, to me, especially for someone like us, like where we're constantly almost putting ourselves in the position where we're uncomfortable because we don't want to feel that that too safe thing, like I gave a kidney because I'm like, life's too good right now. I think I need to shake this up, like I think there's a certain thing where you're like, oh, like life's great. Like how do I now give this back to God to be used? Because part of what I think you're talking about with the Moses story is, and when I talk to other people who have been through like some heavy stuff, is that you're like, God is closest at those moments, you know, like how do I get closer to God? And then it can't be a woe is me moment. It has to be like, oh, okay, God used this, for your glory.
Yeah. And it's almost like those moments strip us from the
pride instantly.
Yeah, all those facades that we put up to try and seem like okay. Even the things that we put up to ourselves, I think, We can have just the false self, where we think we are something we're really not. And those moments tend to reveal what's really going on, what's secure, what isn't. How little control we have is usually one of the things that happens, and then we become really childlike. A child is so dependent, and we become real dependent on others, on God, on circumstances, and it forces us to, like you said, be humble. But in the humility, we are able to receive.
Control's a good word. I think that's a good topic to tie into this. Like, what if someone asked you, like, "Oh, I really liked your talk, Sam, but you know, I kind of need more, like almost like control is a facade of like a safety. Like, I think there's a, what am I trying to get to? Like we're reading in James right now, and there's like a kind of theme of control, and I think there's like something in here too, where I feel like if someone isn't careful, they might hear like be more controlled of your, like, work towards control. And do you think control is like a bad thing?
I think control's an illusion.
Yeah.
I don't think we really have control. I think it's good to try and have a self-mastery of your life in what ways you can, but to always be aware of how big life is beyond you. And so there's nothing wrong with trying to do well, to achieve, to be good at something. And those things can be looked at as control, I suppose, to some degree. But I don't see those as, a place. I guess what can happen is control can become an idol, right? Where it's like, okay, this is where I'm going to find security. This is where I'm going to find contentment. This is really what is going to bring my life what I need. And then I think it's become an idol, because I don't think it can. I think that's the illusion. I think that has to fall apart so that you can see that it wasn't really strong enough to hold life for you. And that's where God again shows up in his unassuming way. He shows up in the little things, in the hurtful things, in the taking the waste and making it fertilizer, taking the broken and mending it. Those are the things God does, that control can't do. And so it's just a different process. And I think seeing it to make sure you don't make it something it shouldn't be.
And I feel like that's different than saying like like everything happens for a reason, because I hate that. But when you hear like God works everything together for good, that's something about that resonates as truth. And everything happens for a reason doesn't, but it kind of sounds like the same thing.
It could, right?
Yeah.
It's one is recognizing, I think, that situations in life happens, and in the middle of those things, God is present and working. Where the other one is almost more like, oh no, it's purposeful, intentional. This is what's going to happen. Like, I don't think God was responsible for Pharaoh killing the babies. I think that was a Pharaoh thing, right? I don't think, Moses being placed in a basket instead of killed was just God thing. I think his mother made an incredible, decision to do that, and was very brave in risking that, right? I mean, all those things are people things that God shows up in, right? It's not just God says, yes, throw the basket out in the water, and yes, kill these kids, right? That's where all things work out, or everything happens for a reason, seems to be more that line. Where, God wanted you to.
It takes the God out of it.
Yeah.
Literally,
And just makes him responsible for everything. So you don't have to take credit for anything or responsibility for anything, because everything happens for a reason. Right? And so it can be anything from a promotion to cancer. Doesn't matter. Everything happens for a reason. And it's like, well, God shows up in wherever we are. But it doesn't mean that it happened because God did it.
Right.
Like that's what I see the rub in that area.
Yeah.
It irks me too. And I just feel something's happened because I was stupid and I made a mistake,
Yeah.
And my fault. I got to take credit. But in the middle of that, God takes that and he uses it in my life.
And I've seen it.
Yeah.
I've seen it in my own life plenty of times.
It's like, quit talking about me like that.
Yeah. God, that's God for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and those are comforting things, right? I mean, towards the end, I talk about, where Stephen says the same Moses that God used to deliver the people.
Yeah, that's key, yeah.
Yeah, the same Moses is the same Moses who was, a slave, the same Moses who was going to be killed, the same Moses thrown in the water, same Moses killed the Egyptian, same Moses who fled for fear for 40 years. That Moses
Yeah.
did
It's
this.
like key for testimony purposes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's like if they saw me 10 years from now, they'd be like, that was Brian, that is Brian,
Yeah.
But he looks and acts different now,
Yeah.
He changed.
That same Brian.
That same Brian.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I like about what you just shared there was the bit about these things that God is bringing us through aren't only for our growth, but for those who are bearing witness to our life, right? So sometimes things happen again and again and again. We're like, why is this happening to me again? But it was never about it happening to you. It was about God using you as an instrument to be on display for his goodness and his glory, right? Like, how will you respond? He'll use you as testimony in your response, as opposed to this is happening to Brian again. This is happening, like
Right. Like what happens in our life is more than just happening to us. It's
Correct.
happening in us to happen through us to the lives of others. Yeah.
And I think that's what I was actually trying to say with the self-awareness thing, that there are people looking at us as 2 steps up.
Mm-hmm.
Like we might think we're in like a horrible position or whatever, but there's someone literally watching you right now saying, like, I need to get where he's at,
Mm-hmm.
and then so I could, level up or whatever. You are leveled up. You are somebody's level up.
Yeah.
Like you
Even
don't
if
know.
You don't think, I remember when all the kids were small, we had 4 little ones in diapers, I think, at the same time. And life was just, it was a hallucination. I mean, it just was hard to focus because we were sleep deprived, we were exhausted and caring for these 4 little ones. And I remember a friend of mine came up to me and he said, "Man, you're so patient. I just admire your patience." And it was like, I had no idea I was patient, right?
Yeah.
I was just exhausted, It's like it looked like patience from him. For me, it was just exhaustion, but it was working something in me, right? I just was unaware of it. I was so exhausted with things that I couldn't respond in positive or negative way. He just saw it as patience, but I did see it as, I guess that is happening in me.
Yeah.
I didn't see it at the time, but through those things, it was forcing me to learn how to be patient. That or a serial killer, right? I mean, that's like my choices. I could have been one or the other. And so patience was the one that went out, fortunately, right? That was a joke. Not a good one, but it was a joke. But those are the kinds of things where those circumstances, right, that happen to you, and it's like you're going through it. Well, someone is looking at it. How are you responding to it? How is it working out in your life? To see those things.
Yeah, and how you respond to it is interesting if you are naturally that thing. Like if you're naturally patient and you act like yeah, you're right, I am being super patient. Like I'm like that'd be Kirk being like, yeah, I've always been a super good artist. I never have to work on my craft. Like it's God did give us gifts to endure. Like I think like if you're a skydiving teacher and then someone calls you brave, because you jump out of a plane every day, but that's actually gives you life and thrills, you're not actually brave, you're just doing the thing you love.
Yeah.
But how you act and how you respond to someone calling you brave could actually teach that person how to be brave, not necessarily what I'm saying, like if it makes sense.
You weren't intending it for that purpose, but they just see it in you.
Yeah, your gift is going to be the thing that teaches them how to do the thing that they're learning it, whether or not it's like skydiving. Like your gift is communication and connection and these things. But if you act like it just comes super easy and it's like this is the thing, without allowing them to like see the troubles, the Moses story and how you got to where you are,
Mhm.
then they may never learn what they were brought to you for. I think
Yeah.
that's like, it's super intentional why God put certain people in our lives.
Yeah, I heard a podcast um, recently talking about millennials and Gen X, how one of the things that they're looking for is authenticity. And they're looking for someone who, they're looking for the you know, weaknesses in the person to show up so that they could see they're real. Instead of wanting someone who has it all together, they're looking to see where the flaws are, and if can you speak to me from the flaws, because then I can appreciate where you're at, because that's where I'm at,
Cool.
And I just thought that was a very interesting take, from someone who's trying to communicate, the gospel to people who are in those younger age groups, and those people who've grown up kind of in, some of them seeing their parents in church and things like that, and then seeing the marriages fall apart,
great.
seeing the hostility at home, the facade at church, and the real life happening, and seeing those things, and then how are you going to communicate Jesus to that person when they've heard a Jesus that hasn't met where they're at in
Right.
life,
It's pretty cool.
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, and it's very interesting, and I think that's what we see through the scripture. I mean, you look at Moses; he murdered someone. David, he took someone's wife, killed the guy. These are the heroes of faith. We teach about them in Sunday school. It's like this is part of the story, the flaws of the people, right? And for some reason, we want to cover those up, put makeup on them, dress them all fancy, and say, that, yeah, they're really good. Moses, the most humble man. We'll pick out that verse. Well, what about Moses, the murderer? It's the same guy. This Moses is that same guy.
Yeah, that's good.
And it's important to have that kind of a balance where people see the real, because otherwise, it's
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good connection too.
yeah.
That's what you said about the millennials, and it took me to a whole other place where we're watching a WandaVision right now,
Oh.
and then there was like that. It's taken. Have you watched it?
Yeah.
And then like how it goes through different stages of maybe like the 60s, 70s. Sorry, Kirk never saw it. So anyhow, there's a stage where it's almost perfect. Like where the wife dresses in like I Love Lucy,
Yeah.
or something like where it's and then to go from that into a place where now the generation is looking for flaws, like because we tried so hard to make everything an aesthetic of perfection, and
Yeah.
and we're like at the point where it's exhausting. We're like,
Mhm.
give me something real other than something
Yeah.
like manufactured. Like, and we know that too when we touch something. We're like, this feels like someone loved this, or
Yeah.
like made it with their hands, opposed to being like in a factory. Like we
Yeah.
know the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's got the human element in it that
Yeah.
now I can connect to. Yeah, that one line. I don't know how much of WandaVision have you? Okay.
Kirk's not having
Oh
it.
man, there's a line in there. There's a line in there that makes me want to weep every time I think about it, but I won't say it. For those of you,
What's the line? I mean, it says the line. He has to find it. It's an Easter egg.
maybe grief is love persevering.
It's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds like some Aristotle.
Yeah, something, but yeah, it's pretty powerful. I think just understanding that, even with the topic here of where you are, maybe the things you've gone through, the hurts, the pains, is love persevering in your life, and that's God persevering in your life.
Cool.
And I think it's important to see that this is the story of Jesus, right? This is what Jesus is about. This is why we are followers of Jesus. He makes all things new. This is what Moses is talking about at the end when Stephen says he was talking about one like him who was to come, right? He's talking about Jesus, the Messiah, the anointed one, the new king in a new kingdom in a new way. And this is all pointing to him, how he's able to take the brokenness of humanity and bring restoration and bring purpose and bring vision and bring healing and bring, a new set of coordinates that we live towards, that help now move from, the ashes to the future that God has for us. I mean, I think that's why, I'm a follower of Jesus, because that's what he's done for me, for you, for so many people, is taken this, broken person and, is working in those broken pieces to produce something that could be useful.
Yeah.
That's important.
That's good. That's good stuff. How we looking? We make it?
Yeah, we're doing good. Any other thoughts or questions? Class? Anyone? Any takeaways? Last takeaway?
When I was listening to it, I had a lot of thoughts going. And even as you were talking, there's things that pop in my head that I think I'd want to dig into. But I think for me, my biggest takeaway is that we're it's strange, but it's the fertilizer thing. I know there's something deeper there. There's because you want to think about every horrible thing that ever happened in your life and think that God used it, and then part of you's I don't know if that's true, but I honestly have felt, especially through writing, I think writing it out, if I focused hard enough, could see God and orchestrating my life through as a little kid, and a lot of my writing, even a lot of the stuff I never shared with anybody, has to do with struggles, and I honestly feel the reason I'm even writing it down is so God can speak to me later about it. I know I have books on books that I'm gonna read later, and God's gonna be there you go, there I am, and I think that's why I'm lucky that God gave me writing as a thing. But all that to say, I can see God working in the fertilizer. I could see God turning that into useful tree growing stuff. And it's designed me. I can't explain any different. It's what molded me. The horrible times are what molded me. But it was good. It was a good comeback start topic.
Yeah. I know. Gosh, it was so different for me having people here.
Yeah.
I felt like.
I could see. I could feel it in your
man.
energy as a speaker. I hate being in an empty room.
Yeah, it was, and then it's it's hard to manufacture that for me.
Yeah.
If there's no one here, it's hard for me to just pretend.
Hey, welcome, guys. Even your welcome was different, and you can't make that
people
up. Yeah, to look at
smiling at me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's always nice.
Yeah.
It was very cool. So missed everybody, and again, hope this can continue and to see more and more people engaging. So thank you guys for being here. Thank you guys for watching. Again, be here Sunday morning at 10 a.m. We're going to do it again, and we'll be doing more and more things. We'll keep you posted at the events. Again, we're going to have our summer sessions. I'll let you know those dates when we have some potlucks. Get together. That'll be a blast.
Potlucks are the best.
They are. Good. All right, you guys. Love you. God bless you.